Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Your Property Journey. Episode 8 already. Yeah, I know. Just a little shout out to all the moms out there that celebrated Mother's Day yesterday. I hope everyone had an awesome day. I had a wonderful day, which started out with a 10-kilometer run. That Absa Run Your City thing, I've never done it before. It sounded like a good idea at the time, and then as the time got closer, I was like, okay, what did I sign myself up for? And needless to say, I walked most of the way, like 90% of the way, but I finished it in just under 2 hours, so not too shabby. But I was lekker ina. I need to get fitter, that's for definite. Then my two boys spoiled me for the rest of the day, which I was absolutely grateful for. And in the background here, this is one of the gifts that they bought for me. So for today's episode, we're going to be chatting about viewings and signing offer documents or agreements of sale. And remember, if you are purchasing with a bond, get yourself pre-approved first. If you are selling to buy another property, once you understand what your profit is going to be from the sale of the house and you deduct the various costs and things like I explained in my previous video, you should be able to get an approximate amount, and then so that it will give you a good idea of what your budget is for the next purchase, whether it's going to be part cash or a combination of cash and bond. And also don't forget, when you are purchasing your second property, you cannot include the costs in your bond application. You will have to use the cash from the sale of the previous property. I will also chat later further on in the video was about the different price categories or brackets in terms of your transfer costs, etc. Okay. So on point one, viewings, I just would like to do a very, very kind request to everyone that is going to view a property or is thinking of viewing a property. Please be on time. Your time is just as important as the seller who took time out to clean the house and to make it presentable for you to view, as well as the agent that drove there with petrol that they had to pay for. So it is very advisable to give the agent at least a 30-minute notification if you are going to be running late, or if you're not going to make the appointment at all, because they also need to let the sellers know, or even tenants, because sometimes there are other people living in the property that is owned by someone else. So there are lots of people involved when you are actually going to view a property. So that request was on behalf of all the agents, probably in the entire world. Okay. I just would like to give an upfront disclaimer. So because I am filming from home, the sound quality or the background noise might sometimes pick up, so I apologize for that. And also, as we continue with these episodes, the information that I'm going to be providing is sometimes a bit more in depth and has more detail. Sometimes I prefer to just jot down some notes to make sure I capture everything, that I don't forget anything. So occasionally I'll be reading that information off a sheet. So it's not that knowledge that I don't have, but it's just me trying to make sure I capture everything. So with regards to viewings for the seller, the number one point is you need to make sure that you are presenting your asset in the best possible way. First impressions last. for anything and everything. So try your best just to make sure that the house is neat and tidy and smelling nice. You also need to speak to your agent about doing block bookings. That's something that I try and do, especially when a property has just come on the market and I have quite a few inquiries. I try and arrange with the seller to do an hour, perhaps once or twice in the week, just to get those first few inquiries, viewings out of the way. So normally I would try to do an hour booking and we could get probably, I would say 4 to 5 viewings in that, depending of course on the size of the property. Also, if for some reason you don't get an offer out of those first few viewings, then the agent would normally want to arrange a show day. We are very successful, or most agents are very successful with show days because we get people that do actually want to come and view on a Sunday, and they know that most agencies have show days on a Sunday, and sometimes people are not able to get time off during the week or they work shifts or things like that. So Sundays are very important, and do at least one show day to help your agent sell that property. Also make sure that the agent provides feedback to you after each and every viewing or show day or block viewings, or if there are no viewings, let them give you an update on how many inquiries there were for the week or the 2 weeks, etc. Because that will give you a very good indication how the property is actually doing in the market. The first 2 weeks is a very good indication on whether a property is priced right or not. Normally, if it is priced right, you would actually get an offer within that first week or two. If not, and if there are perhaps 100 people that have viewed the property online, but no one has actually even attempted or inquired about the property, meaning sending an agent a WhatsApp or an email to request a viewing, that is normally a sign that the property, they loved looking at the property, the pictures, they love it, but they feel that the price is not right. And as an agent, I have to also inform all sellers. Price counseling is a very important part of listing your property. Many viewers and buyers are very aware of how to use the websites and to see how long a property has been listed on the market. And they are more than likely to come and tell me that, look, this property's been on the market for 6 months and the price hasn't come down, it is very overpriced. Doesn't the owner want to take a lower offer, etc. like that? So be realistic in your expectations in terms of the price of the property versus what the market thinks the property should be priced at, and kind of be flexible and take the advice of the agent. A good agent will give you the proper feedback. And remember, we're not here to just sell properties for any price, because we are also losing out in the commission if we reduce the price. So it's not just about selling the price. So it's not just about selling the property for the sake of selling it. But we want to make sure that you get the best price out of the property. The seller pays what it's worth, and we get our commission that we've earned. If you are not from Cape Town and you're wanting to buy a property here, and you perhaps have friends or family that can go and view the property on your behalf, then ask them to do that, or even Google the area. Very important for the viewers, don't be afraid to ask questions about the property. Even if it's small property or a very large property, ask the questions. Things like, what type of roof is it if you can't see it from the outside? Has any extensions been done to the house? Are there approved plans for the extensions that have been done to the house? Is there a borehole? Most agents try and list as much information as possible on the listing. If, for instance, you were not clear or maybe didn't have time to read the listing information, ask the questions. And just to make sure that you are fully aware of what the house has, what the finishes are, etc. If you want to know more information about the area, you can ask the agent after the viewing, and if they are unsure about anything, they can reach out to the sellers to confirm anything. If you are attending a show house, make sure that you get a pamphlet or a link of the listing from the agent so that you can keep track of if you are now really viewing quite a few properties, just to make sure that you keep track of all the properties that you have viewed. If you are really interested in the property, don't be afraid to do a second viewing. And I also just want to add, in most cases, don't be fooled by thinking, oh, you can take your time to decide whether you want to put in an offer on this property that you absolutely loved, because there's someone else that probably viewed the property as well and is thinking the same thing that you are thinking and has already contacted the agent to sign an offer. So even though buying a property is a very important decision to make and should not be taken lightly, at the same time, if you are a serious buyer, it's more than likely that there'll be someone else that's also a serious buyer. So make your decision as quickly as you can. And remember, you've done your research on the area, you've worked out your budget, know what your must-haves are, and you've worked out the affordability in terms of all the extras that you're going to be paying. So do all of that before the time. So when you do actually see a property, you know exactly what you can and cannot afford. But of course, there's also times when some clients just want to see what is in the market, what do you get for the different budgets in the different areas before you actually decide to start making a definite decision in terms of buying a property. I also want to explain the difference between a buyer's market and a seller's market. A buyer's market is when there are more properties available to sell than there are buyers who are willing to buy. Therefore, the increase in property units for sale makes it more negotiable for the buyers. A seller's market is when there are more buyers than properties available. So, the scarcity of properties creates an increase in the price of these properties, and therefore I would say that the sellers then have an upper hand, and then buyers who then sign an offer for a higher price than what the actual selling price is. A seller's market is when there are more buyers than properties available. So next up, I'm going to explain the process of signing an offer or an agreement of sale. Very important point to make, you are only allowed to sign one offer document at a time. Some people seem to think that you can sign 2 or 3. You cannot do that. Once you've signed an actual agreement of sale, you are liable. It is a binding document. And if any cancellations needs to take place, there could be costs that you will be liable to pay for that cancellation. And it also depends how far in the process it is when you cancel that agreement of sale. You will also be required to provide your ID and proof of address, which is for picker purposes, so that the agent can verify that the person that they are dealing with is indeed the person that is signing the offer, as well as confirmation of your address for location purposes. And it also depends how far in the process it is when you cancel that agreement of sale. Please, 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 I cannot stress this enough. I've had many stories with viewers, for example, where they've signed offers, agreements of sales with other agents, and the agent actually didn't even really explain the document to them. They didn't even know what was happening, and then they were told that their offer fell through because there was another offer, and they didn't even know that there was another offer, etc. Take your time when you are signing that agreement of sale. It's an important document, and make sure that the agent explains each and every section, every page before you sign an initial anything. Sure that when you sign the agreement of sale, it has a property condition report. Now, the property condition report is a document that the seller has to complete to make sure that they indicate whether they know of any issues that they know about on the property. So any electrical issues or plumbing, or if there are any structural issues or roof leaks, etc. They need to put that down and make sure that they either know about it or to their knowledge there is nothing. That document covers yourself as the buyer, as the seller, and as well as the agent. And also bear in mind that the agent is not a lie detector. We do not know if the seller is withholding information. We can only do what we need to do. The property is registered and transferred. The agent is no longer involved in the process. And now whatever issues that you're experiencing needs to be handled via the attorney's office. The buyer also needs to confirm how the purchase is going to be financed. So if you are pre-approved, you will provide the agent with your pre-approval certificate, because once the agreement of sale document is signed by yourself, the seller, and the agency, you are then given a copy of this agreement of sale, which you now need to give back to your bond originator or to your bank, and they will obtain the final bond grant, which you now need to submit back to the agent. If you are purchasing with cash, you need to provide a statement of account to the agent to confirm where these funds are coming from. And as I explained in my previous video, there are of course costs for yourself as the buyer, which is your transfer fees, your transfer duties, etc., as well as your bond registration fees if you are purchasing with a bond. Also bear in mind, for the buyer and the seller, when you are pricing your property, make sure that you price it correctly in terms of the transfer bands as well, because you're helping the buyer. And also when you are negotiating, have a look at those bands. I have put it over here, so you can, this is a picture of, a screenshot of information that we normally put in our brochures when we do viewings, so that it gives the buyers an idea of what the possible costs would be should they want to purchase the property. And there's also apps and websites where you can actually do this calculation for yourself. And as explained in the previous video as well, the cost, like the certificates of compliance for the sellers, that would also be included in the agreement of sale as well. They will basically delete all the ones that are not applicable. So for example, if there's no electric fence, that will be taken out. If there are no gas appliances, then the gas CS inspection would also be removed. There's annexures as well, so we get a 72-hour clause. So the 72-hour clause basically states that if there is a second offer, the first offer would be put to terms given 3 working days if the second buyer brings forth, signs an offer and presents their proof of cash or their final bond grant, and then the first offer would be given 3 working days within which to either present their proof of cash or their final bond grant from their bank as well. If they do not provide that, the first offer would fall away and the second client would then get the property. The annexures that we normally would use are things like if the sale of the property is based on the buyer selling their current house, or if the sale of property is based on the seller renting a property or for the seller to buy a new property, Yeah, I think that's the main ones. In the next episode or two, I will be chatting to the attorney's office to give us more insight and information in terms of the steps that is followed when your when the agreement of sale is now handed over to the attorney's office. Also, a very important point to make is the type of marriage that you have is also important. So another important point also to make is the type of marriage that you have, whether it's in community of property, an anti-nuptial agreement, etc. Because that would indicate whether the sellers, for example, if both spouses needs to sign the document, or if the buyers, um, you need to make sure that you inform the agent of that as well. Another important point is knowing whether the property that you are selling or that you are buying is a late estate. So a late estate refers to when one or both of the owners of the property have deceased or are deceased, and now there are family members perhaps, uh, and now perhaps there are family members that are wanting to sell the property. Before a property Before you decide to sell the property, you need to appoint an executor. An attorney's office can assist you with that and get all the necessary documentation so you have all of that information sorted out, getting an actual executor document from the courts, and then listing the property for sale. Because if you don't do that, that process can take a few months and can delay the entire process for the buyer as well. So once all the above conditions are met, whatever it is, in terms of whether it's a bond or a cash or subject to sale of a property, once all those conditions are met, the agreement of sale is then submitted to the attorneys, and that is when the actual sale process begins. And the last point, I think, when it gets to that process, it can become very daunting, especially if you are a first-time buyer. You are going to be contacted if you are buying the property through a bond. You are going to be contacted by the transfer attorneys as well as the bond attorneys. The bond attorneys is usually appointed by the bank, and in most instances, it is two different attorneys. So try not to get confused and try and get all the information that you can from the agent so that you are ready and know what is expected from you, because you will be called in the office to sign the transfer document, and you will also be called into the other attorney's office to sign your bond papers as well. So, and also, if you are selling a property and buying another property, you could end up working with four different attorneys, which can become very daunting and confusing. My advice is, my advice to you is to take notes. Okay, and then that's it for today's episode. I know I gave lots of information, and you're probably gonna have to watch this video a few times if it is something that you're probably gonna have to. You probably would want to watch this video a few times if it's something that is interesting. If it is, you're probably you're probably going to want to watch this video. You're probably going to want to watch this video a few times if there are some information that was very important for you. And then I'd also like to know if you can comment below, what piece of information did you find most interesting today that you never knew about, or even something that you agree with. I would really appreciate your comment below. So that's it for episode 8. I hope that you found the information interesting and informative. And in the next episode, I think I'm just going to do a quick video of in the day of the life. So for the next episode, I'm probably just going to do a quick video, a day in the life of an agent. And I hope that you guys have an excellent day, wherever you are, whatever time it is that you're watching this episode. And please, please, please don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate everyone that has subscribed so far. and share the video and like it, and please comment below whatever it is that you would like me to share or talk about in the future episodes. That will also be great. And I'll see everyone at the next episode of your property journey. The annexures that we normally would use are things like if the sale of the property is based on the buyer selling their current house, or if the sale of property is based on the seller renting a property, or for the seller to buy a new property. Yeah, I think that's the main ones. In the next episode or two, I will be chatting to the attorney's office to give us more insight and information in terms of the steps that is followed when your when the agreement of sale is now handed over to the attorney's office. The type of marriage that you have, whether it's in community of property, an anti-nuptial agreement, etc., because that would indicate whether the sellers, for example, if both spouses needs to sign the document, or if the buyers, um, you need to make sure that you inform the agent of that as well. A late estate refers to when one or both of the owners of the property have deceased or are deceased, and now there are family members perhaps, or and now perhaps there are family members that are wanting to sell the property. Before you decide to sell the property, you need to appoint an executor. An attorney's office can assist you with that and get all the necessary documentation, so you have all of that information sorted out, getting an actual executor document from the courts, and then listing the property for sale. All the above conditions are met, whatever it is, in terms of whether it's a bond or a cash or subject to sale of a property. Once all those conditions are met, the agreement of sale is then submitted to the attorneys, and that is when the actual sale process begins. And the last point, I think, when it gets to that process, it can become very daunting, especially if you are a first-time buyer. You are going to be contacted if you are buying the property through a bond. You are going to be contacted by the transfer attorneys as well as the bond attorneys. The bond attorneys is usually appointed by the bank, and in most instances, it is two different attorneys. So try not to get confused, and try and get all the information that you can from the agent, so that you are ready and know what is expected from you, because you will be called in the office to sign the transfer documents, and you will also be called into the other attorney's office to sign your bond papers as well. If you are selling a property and buying another property, you could end up working with 4 different attorneys, which can become very daunting and confusing. My advice to you is to take notes. So I'd like to know if you can comment below, what piece of information did you find most interesting today that you never knew about, or even something that you agree with. I would really appreciate your comment below. So that's it for episode 8. I hope that you found the information interesting and informative. Next episode, I'm probably just going to do a quick video, a day in the life of an agent, and I hope that you guys have an excellent day, wherever you are, whatever time it is that you're watching this episode. And please, please, please don't forget to subscribe. I really appreciate everyone that has subscribed so far. And share the video and like it, and please comment below whatever it is that you would like me to share or talk about in the future episodes. That will also be great. And I'll see everyone at the next episode of your property journey.